I'm Dean Takahashi. I'm the lead writer for GamesBeat at VentureBeat. I've been writing about games for about 15 years or so. It's never been more fun because of the interesting companies that are appearing here in the social and mobile space. I've got a couple of the very interesting companies here. We have John Getz from Kixeye and Leo Levy from Kabam. Why don't you guys talk a little bit about your background, how you got to where you are?
You want to start? Okay. For me, I've been in the games business about 11 years or so. I know a lot of people in the room. I've been doing online for since Matrix Online back in the day, and just kept doing more and more online games. And I just came from working at BioWare on Star Wars: The Old Republic. So super excited to be at Kabam and move my family back to San Francisco. It's awesome.
All 6 years worth of it, or?
Yeah, the whole time. Oh yeah, I was the first marketing dude in a little room by myself, trying to figure out what are we gonna do. It was before we even knew what game we were making or anything.
Yeah.
And I've got a consumer internet background, and my foray into video games has been strictly with Kixeye. I sort of jumped at the chance to work in games, being a long-term fan. I grew up with, my next door neighbor had Pong, and then I got the Atari 2600, and then another friend had Intellivision, and then ColecoVision, and then NES, of course, and then so it's always been a dream of mine, and really excited about working in the gaming space.
So tell us about the companies too, and how you got to where you are right now.
Sure, yeah. So Kixeye was originally a company called Casual Collective, founded by two devs that made the sort of first Flash tower defense game called Desktop Tower Defense. And they were fans that are friends that met at a LAN party, and they were big Dota players, and they started making games together, and they got a round of funding from Lightspeed, and built the company up. And I came aboard, I think I was the 5th employee. And when I started in June of 2010, we set out to make the first RTS game on the Facebook platform called Backyard Monsters. And it was pretty interesting. We actually had an email that we got our hands on from one of the big four. You know who they are, right? Or they were at the time. And that said, these guys are nuts. You can't monetize an RTS game. There's no virtual goods, and much to our satisfaction, that's not been the case, and it's been very successful.
What are some of the other games you guys?
Battle Pirates, War Commander are the other two, and then we've got a RPG slated for September.
And
Yeah, I mean, Kabam's been around for a few years now. First big game was Kings of Camelot. So I think it was probably a very similar story with respect of, this is a new and unique type of game in the space, and we found the core, and they, we're really excited about the product, highly engaged, and the game's really been taken off ever since. I think we now have about 8 games in the portfolio or so. So there's Kings of Camelot, there's Edgeworld, The Godfather 5 Families, Global Warfare. I mean, the list goes on and on. We've been making a lot of games, trying to make the best games that we can.
So Zynga has something like 240 million or so monthly active users on Facebook, and Kixeye has 4.48 million according to app data. Kabam has 2 million on Facebook. So why are your numbers a big deal? You're completely outclassed as far as numbers of users. But tell us more about these users.
Well, I think there's a couple things. One is the number of daily active users as a percentage of monthly active users for our games is a lot higher. I don't know how many of that giant number that Zynga has are unique users. I know it's measured across the game. 150 million, yeah. And I think the other two things that are really key is, one, we sort of strive to have sort of a different breed of game that's much more like a traditional PC game or online game on the platform. And secondly, as you touched on earlier, sir, the level of ARPDAU is much higher than Kabam does. I mean,
Dang.
yeah, sorry.
Gauntlet thrown! Boom! Whoa!
The traditional social gaming companies. No, I pretend like I don't know, but I really know. No, they do very well for themselves. But yeah, and so and for me again, because I really approach this from a fanboy sort of viewpoint, is that it's really the fun factor, and I really enjoyed the sort of casino analogy that was brought up, and yeah, we're a bunch of poker players that are making games for other poker players, to use the casino analogy.
Mm-hmm. And you guys have something like 90% of your people coming back 6 or 7 days a week. And playing
Yeah,
for
I mean,
more than
the
hours.
numbers are phenomenal. I think that the answer to the question is, why does it matter when if you're talking, 250 million over here and 2 million over here, it's, how many people are playing, how many people are staying, and how many people are paying, right? And if you can figure out ways to effectively monetize folks where they're paying and where they're playing, then you have a good business model, whether that's 5 people, or 500 million people.
So I know Electronic Arts started out experimenting on Facebook as well, and they didn't do so well with some of the first games like Spore Islands. It was kind of a hardcore game. They put it out there and nobody played it, so they dropped it. But you guys sort of discovered the hardcore audience on Facebook. How did this happen? Two companies that kind of came out of nowhere did better than a company that was established in 1982.
I know for us it was, there's an accessibility to the Facebook platform that offers tremendous value, especially for a startup that's coming out into the space. It sort of levels the playing field, and I think our games are less about virality and sort of social hooks, and they're more about an immersive gaming experience that people can come to and really enjoy playing like they would on any other platform.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of this stuff is not, overly complicated per se. I think that Kabam's success is rooted in, kind of the fundamentals of why, people in the online space are inherently successful, which is you have the ability to be dynamic, so dynamism, right? Then tenacity, passion, focus, and the ability to turn on a dime. So, Michael talked about this. There's a lot of games have been built and created that you might say, oh, this is similar to that, or like if you look at the first-person shooter analogy was absolutely appropriate. But you just keep going at it. You keep refining your processes and your procedures and try to do better and just make a really, really great game that your consumer is going to enjoy. So.
And if you look at some of the games too, they're not that impressive by console standards.
Right.
And yet they are hardcore. They are poker-like games. I guess, right? How do you sort of explain that hardcore gamers would even be attracted to something that looks, doesn't look like it has 3D graphics?
Right. I know for Kickstarter, I think technology is a great thing, but I think in the last sort of 15 years, there's been far too much emphasis on realistic graphics and not enough on the actual gameplay and game mechanics. I've played a lot of console games where it looks great, but it's as far as game mechanics go, it's not that engaging and competitive, and doesn't sort of offer the same sort of immersive experience. And so yeah, our games are all done in Flash, and like I said, we were 6 people when we started, and we did everything in house between 2 devs, and yeah, love to get the graphics to the next level, and I think we're working really hard at doing that. And but yeah, I think again, it's sort of Flash versus the meat of the content that we're striving for.
Absolutely. If you think about anything where people are highly passionate and highly engaged, whether that's like golf. I'm not a golfer, but I know somebody might watch golf and be like, oh my gosh, their swing has done this or that. I really like martial arts, so I can watch, UFC or karate competitions where you have 2 guys staring at each other for 2 minutes and then 5 seconds of action. Like, it's extraordinarily, compelling when you're watching this stuff, and it's because you understand like some of the dynamics that are going on in the background. And if you think about, I was playing MUDs back in college, and there was nothing there. It was all text. but it was really, really freaking fun.
Yeah.
You know, or the Space Quest games, they made evolutions in technology. So as long as the gameplay is there and the core of those things that drive people to be actively engaged in the product, and it's really, really appealing, like it's cool. So I don't know if anybody's into like baseball statistics. I totally don't get it, but some people spend all of their time reading that stuff.
So how many hardcore gamers are there on Facebook? How do you find them?
Yeah, I don't know. We're still trying to figure that out too, Dean. We do trying to figure out how many there are and what the limit is, and you know, again, like Michael was saying, I think it's a sort of symbiotic relationship between the more casual games and the core games, because you have people that start out maybe you know, with a casual game and then progress on to more sophisticated games. But yeah, we do a lot of Facebook advertising. We do some off Facebook advertising as well. And you know, we've got a crack analytics team and a great marketing team that sort of makes it their business to know where the parallels and things that would interest other categories would interest the people that would be interested in the game. So you know, and it's really on a per game basis. For our game War Commander, there's a lot of heavy gun related topics and films and for Battle Pirates, it's you know, we had a lot of U.S. Navy guys playing the game, and so I think, you know, each franchise is different, but I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think more than 1 million, less than 300 million is the answer.
There you go. I like that.
So I mean, we're still figuring out exactly what the right number is, right? And we know that Facebook is awesome. That's where people play. That's where you can get really viral. But it's not necessarily the only place where people are consuming their content.
Right.
Right. So I think part of the activity is to fish where the fish are and really understand. You know, is somebody playing on Facebook? Are they playing on Google Plus? Are they playing, you know, in whatever particular browser? Like, you know, to us, it doesn't really matter. We just want you to have a great time and experience the product.
So you guys at Kabam have moved on to a total of something like 6 platforms now, right? How did you look at Facebook as a platform and then make the decision to move to the other platforms?
I think that the analogy remains the same with respect to, yeah, there are a lot of people on Facebook. There are a lot of people on Facebook for social-based activities. There are a lot of people on Facebook that are playing games, but it's only one place where they are. You know, and I think the beauty of, you know, digital content that can move from, you know, a phone device to a handheld to wherever it's going to be is that you have to figure out where people like to spend their time. You know, I'm now newly a commuter. I'm in the train all the time. I'm not pulling out my Nintendo DS or anything, but I'm on my iPhone playing Words with Friends all the time, right? And that works for me because that's part of my lifestyle. So why constrain yourself to a particular avenue? And that's what today's technology really provides for.
And Facebook, they have some sort of complications, I guess, that have sort of popped up along the way. They sort of put a crackdown and stopped a lot of the purely spam-like viral messages. Mm-hmm. They started charging 30% for virtual goods transaction. And the cost of user acquisition, I guess, is going up, right? The cost of ads on Facebook is sure. So I assume this comes into your calculations instead. Okay, you know, how much am I going to try to find these people? Am I going to spend a lot of money to find these people?
Right, right, absolutely. And I mean, the other part of the equation though is you could spend $1 to acquire somebody who's going to be, you know, giving you 50 cents over the lifetime, you know, of the product, or you could spend $1 million, and if that person winds up giving you $6 million, you're still doing all right as well. So, I mean, user acquisition, the actual cost of acquisition is only one part of the absolute equation.
And back to some sense of the high rollers here, to use that casino analogy, like what percentage of this total are they? I know that Zynga's paying customers are 2 to 3% of those 240 million users, and those guys are paying maybe $2 or $3 a month. Those people. So your numbers are much different, and you're going after this purely after this crowd.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, it's funny too. The casino analogy. I think they call them the same thing in the casinos that we do in gaming, and that's whales. You know, there's definitely different levels of monetization and also different pace too. You know, I'm the type of player like, well, I'll play it, I'll grind for as long as I can until I get to that point, and then once, you know, I put my credit card down, I'm done. And, you know, I love video games, but I think, you know, one thing that we're very conscious of with our community as a whole, whether they are whales or not, is having an open dialogue with them and trying to solicit feedback and you know, really connecting with them and what's working and as a qualitative research method, but also as a way to help shape development.
I mean, I don't know exactly, you know, what the percentage is. I just know that there are multiple ways to value a consumer, and one of them is how much are they contributing to, you know, your bottom line based on how they're engaging in the overall game experience. But also, you might have somebody who's not monetizing at all, and they have a wide social net of friends that they're bringing into the equation as well, and maybe their friends are monetizing, you know, and or that, you know, just equates in an advertising example to eyeballs at the end of the day. So, you know, there are different pieces of value that can be associated with the various consumer set. I don't know what the exact numbers are, and, you know, with respect to, you know, what are the high roller percentages of the total gaming audience or anything, but, you know, we try and find them, we try and find their friends, we try and find people who are going to have fun playing the game.
Right. I mean, and it's a pretty simple equation too. It's that your LTV needs to be higher than your CPI. So I think that, you know, back to the sort of, you know, it's always touted as a low barrier to entry for Facebook. I think it's a lot more difficult to get into space now. When we launched Backyard Monsters, we were looking at a 30-day break-even point on all of our spend because we had no money. So any spend that we did for July had to break even by the end of August in order for us to go and continue to spend. And I think, you know, once you're established and you have sort of the food court of different franchises, that, you know, it doesn't matter if it's pizza or burritos or burgers or whatever, they're still eating at sort of the Kickside food court. You're looking at a network LTV, and that really helps with user acquisition. But yeah, it's extremely challenging given the cost of user acquisition to come onto the platform now. And your first game basically has to be a hit.
I guess in these equations, you really have to figure out what the lifetime value really is like.
Well, the ELTV, at least the estimated lifetime value.
Yeah. If you're guessing wrong on that, then
yeah, you're
in big trouble.
You're in big trouble. Yeah.
Okay. So if it's 30 days and all that,
Yeah.
something's wrong with your game.
Yeah. Well, and I think, you know, to Leo's point too, I think that, you know, the sort of audience we bring in is a more sophisticated core gamer that's used to spending money for a gaming experience. So as long as we can get them engaged and really enjoying the game, they're more open to spending, and they're going to spend more than someone that wouldn't categorize themselves as a gamer and only plays for 5 minutes every day.
And we also have the ability to, excuse me, materially affect what that LTV or ELTV is going to be, because on a daily basis, your hourly basis, sometimes you're measuring performance, you're measuring user engagement, you're giving them various offers and opportunities, you're growing the game, adding things to it that they may be more or less excited about. So, you know, it's an ongoing process. The battle isn't over at any point. It's a constant fight.
So how is this different from marketing console games? And say, what does your, say, in-house marketing team really do that's different?
Sure. Well, I've marketed all sorts of different types of games in my career. I think that the fundamentals are the same, and if anybody's heard me talk about, you know, the fundamentals of marketing before, like that part of the speech never changes, which is you have to understand your product, you have to understand your customer, and you have to introduce them to each other, right? So make sure you have the right game with the right person and find them, you know, where they're at. I think that the difference in this space is there's an additional element, which is kind of acquisition, right? Where you're trying to figure out, you know, it's almost equation based, where, you know, people are seeing ads on various, you know, networks around the internet, and you're drawing them into the web of your product experience, so to speak. So the fundamentals of branding, positioning, understanding your features, really knowing, you know, what your game is at and what it can deliver to your end consumer, you know, basics of consumer research and analysis, those things don't change. If you don't know who your customer is, you're probably screwed from the outset anyways. So, you know, you need all that stuff, and then you also need to be really smart about, you know, the monetization bits and like how much you're spending on an ad today and how much of the money are they going to bring in. So it's both. It's traditional product marketing. It's also performance-based acquisition marketing.
Yeah, and I also think it's very different tactically. Marketing a console game is a lot like a blockbuster movie. You've got a set window where you're going to advertise the game, and it's brute force. It's a giant invasion of troops. And when you have a product that's more like a service that can continue to evolve over time, it's more of like a sort of Black Ops SWAT team that's going to come in and make tactical kills.
So Eric Hirschberg, the CEO of Activision Publishing, gave a talk at the DICE Summit a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about how, especially with Call of Duty, games are not products anymore. They're brands, and they're brands that you buy into, and their job is to convince you, the players, to do this year-round. So launching things like Call of Duty Elite, where you're paying a subscription fee. Do you guys also look at it in a very similar way?
I mean, I've been a gamer my entire life, a consumer of pop culture, and I think that you absolutely, identify with a brand and with a franchise. I'm more than happy to show everybody pictures of my kids and like Star Wars stuff, and that's what we found passion in and what we really, really enjoy. And I think that's where consumers that are going to be, if you want to call it monetizing the best, participating in your product, being passionate advocates, that it's the brand and the foundation of the brand that's really going to draw those folks out and keep them actively engaged, where it becomes some sort of like 24/7 experience.
Have you guys done a good ad yet?
Done a good ad?
And what is that ad like? The Call of Duty ad. Well, that's interesting. Was there's a soldier in all of us. Their theme of just anybody can pick up and play this game.
Yeah.
I think that Kabam does good ads all the time. There's a difference, however, between an ad that is going to win some sort of like special fantastic award and an ad that's going to 10,000 people see it, 3,000 people click on it, and 1,000 of those turn into people that pay. So the definition is probably more of like, we should respond to a question with a question. So what is a good ad? It really depends on how you're going to measuring effectiveness of the ad.
And is it best for you to place it on Facebook?
I think go ahead. Oh. I think it's best for you to place it where the people are that are going to be playing your game. So,
yeah.
I mean, again, you figure out who's playing your game, what are they passionate about, what are they excited about, and where are they living. Whether that's going to be, on Congregate and playing out there. Shout out to Lee, what's up, man? Or if it's Facebook, or if it's Google Plus, or what have you, right? I mean,
Yeah, I think that it's just about what the objective of the campaign is. If you're trying to do user acquisition for us, yeah, it's Facebook all day. If we ran an Insanity Wolf-based meme ad for recruiting purpose on BART recently, and I think
all the time.
Okay, good. I think 99% of the people that got on the BART train said, "What the fuck is that?" Right, and that's fine because we're trying to target the developers that we think know what that is immediately, and will find it humorous. So it's just all about the objective of the ad that dictates what the content is and where it's delivering it.
I know on the mobile side that the cost of user acquisition is measured and it's doubled in the past year or so. I assume maybe Facebook is in a similar boat. Is that going to lead to some kind of shakeup here in this space?
I actually think it already has. I mean, I think when I first started purchasing traffic for Kickside, it was June of 2010, and so the average cost per install was $1.50, even lower, maybe $1 to $1.50, and I think that's doubled. Again, I think you need the heavy ARPDAU to back it up, or you need a sort of network LTV that you can balance that against to make it work.
Open it up for audience questions. If you guys have any questions in the back.
Hey guys, Matthew on Ubisoft. What's up, Leo?
Hey, man.
As marketers, traditionally most of you guys' time is spent used to be acquisition. How much of your time do you think you're spending more on retention and monetization for these types of games? And is it you as a marketer doing it, or are you relying more on your community teams, your player experience teams, what have you?
Yeah, for us, it was, coming out of the gate, like I said, with just one game and being a brand new startup, it was all about user acquisition. 23 million installs later, I think it is about cross-promotion of the other games and retaining those users. The retention is important from the beginning. Like, it doesn't matter how many people you got coming through the front door if they're all leaving out the back door in 10 days. But sort of, yeah, cross-promotion. And, for a long time for us, it was like, who are you? We're like, oh, yeah, we make backyard monsters. Oh, yeah, I know you guys. So, sort of establish a brand. And I'm a performance marketer at heart, so it's kind of tough for me to swallow, but it is important.
Yeah, I mean, I think marketing is involved in absolutely every step of the process, whether that's acquisition, retention, game design, QA, customer service, what have you. And the philosophy is very simple, which is just that in a connected world, people have the opportunity to have an impression upon your product or service at every single absolute moment in their daily lives. Regardless of whether that's a conversation on the train, or on the phone, or they call in for a CS ticket and they're sitting in a queue for 4 hours or whatever it's going to be. So, I mean, marketing, whether you absolutely own a particular channel or an avenue for communicating with the customer, doesn't really matter per se, as much as being actively involved in the conversation. Because the last thing we want, I mean, if you have crap games, it's not going to do any good for you. So you better be doing your consumer research and telling people if you think something isn't right with your product.
Your analytics are much better on Facebook, previous platforms. How do you use that to your advantage and really start targeting people to retain them, to notice exactly what they're doing in the game, and then offer things to them that are going to make them do something like spend money?
I'm going to go out on a limb
Sure, go for it.
and say that I think, for both of our companies, it's less about hooks that are baked in and more about the gameplay that works to retain people. It's not sort of a fabricated layer put on top of the gaming experience. It's actually the gaming experience that retains people. And that's the thing. Like, I'm not a huge fan of the sort of social gaming tag. We're on a social gaming, or we're on a social network, but our games are competitive. They're not like working with friends to do stuff. That guy just bombed my base. I'm gonna go get that fucker and make him pay. And so I think I don't know. Am I speaking too much for you?
No, go for it. Have fun. I'll throw something.
Yeah.
No, I think that's absolutely correct. Our analytics are incredibly important, as is gameplay. And again, to me, none of this stuff is necessarily rocket science per se, which is great game equals people who play and people who stay and people who pay.
Does it sort of feel better that you know so much more about your players than you
Absolutely.
did when you were in the console?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I mean, from traditional kind of consumer, analysis, metrics, segmentation, psychographic, demographics kind of stuff, wherever you want to go. The more information that you have about your customer and where they are and what they're doing and how they're doing it and who they're doing it with, absolutely the better. And we're in a unique position where we can drop an ad and track it all the way down to what somebody's doing 6 months later. And so of course that helps you, and I think it leads to intelligence about building a better product at the end of the day. In addition to kind of the day-to-day ways that we can work with our customers to provide them with a great game experience that means more value to our companies.
And I also think, to that point, the analytics are important because they're telling you the what. But for us, the qualitative is just as important. It's the why they're doing this. I mean, so much data now to say this is what they're doing. They're doing this X, Y, and Z. But the why is a more qualitative answer that you need to get sort of pulled more organically from your community team.
Other questions? Over there.
Hey guys. So in terms of, you guys are obviously marketing, even if you don't call it social gaming, core games on a new platform. How much would you say for both of your companies you are pulling core gamers away in terms of hours, et cetera, of play that they do on their traditional platforms into yours? And do you think that's where a lot of the growth of your part of the industry is versus getting new people in from the social, from the more casual angle?
Yeah, I think for us it's not much. I think that most of the people we're bringing in are people that have not played as many console games and stuff, that have found us on Facebook and are playing the games and stuff like that. I still think there's a big stigma attached to playing core games on Facebook. But I think, for us, the future lies in sort of working with Facebook to legitimize the platform, and have gaming experience that are really complicated and in-depth and immersive, to bring in people that would play it on a console or on an online game. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a rob Peter to pay Paul type of a equation with respect to the gamer's time, especially when you bring in the context of the when, so like my own personal experience is I'm, a new commuter, whether I'm on AC Transit or BART or whatever, that's a new gameplay experience for me. It's when I'm not at home, playing an MMO or firing up my console game, and there's just different times to experience the games. I don't think it's necessarily, you're squeezing one out to fit something else in there. It all kind of just slots into the 24/7 cycle that you have.
Yeah, it's definitely an older demographic that play our games, and I understand that too as a dad and a fanboy. I'll play on my phone if I'm on the BART,
Right.
or if I'm at home, I'll play a console game, and then when I'm at work, I'll play on online games, whether it be on Facebook or stuff. But it's interesting to that point. We actually thought at one point, we're like, oh, so this is going to be for core gamers while they're at work. They'll play our games at work. And that's really not been the case. Like, the heavy concurrent user hits usually Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So, yeah, there's definitely something going on.
I've got one more tough question here for the Kabam folks. I guess in August of last year, you guys were 13 million monthly active users, right? And, on Facebook, and now you're at 2 million. And during that time, you moved from the one platform to 6 platforms, I guess. So that's a big drop off in users. Is there something that explains it, other than that, the new games didn't turn out so well?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that when you think about Facebook as an initiatory kind of I don't even know if that's a word, but it sounds cool, so we'll use it. As the place where people get their foundation, and and you birth these games. Awesome, great, it's really viral. You're pinging your friends, you're bringing people in, like it's totally cool. I think that the Kabam story, is really one of exploration, and fascination with the space, and again, this core idea of fish where the fish are, and people are playing all over the place. So I don't think that Facebook is the only measure. Is it a good measure? It's a great measure, for a game that's only on Facebook. But if you have games that are being played elsewhere, there are users playing elsewhere, and they're doing pretty well for us.
But one thing that seems a little scary is that I would guess that you guys were advertising the games before that. Once you moved off to other platforms, you stopped advertising on Facebook, and then you see this drop off in users. Isn't that scary?
I know. I clicked on an ad the other day.
Well, there
So
you go.
You guys are still
That's
advertising.
awesome. You got $5.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it suggests there's a churn here going on, I guess, that you have to throw money at it in order to hold it off.
When I was at BioWare, one of the ways that we thought about kind of the consumer opportunity and who was out there was this notion of mining, right? You're out there, you're gathering minerals, you're finding out, well, where's the gold, where's the silver, where's the platinum? In certain points of phases, you're prospecting, maybe you're out on Facebook, and you're finding new users to experience your games. But you can mine all over the place, and there's gold to be found. It's not just in Nevada or in downtown Sacramento. There's gold all over the place, so you're not limited. I think it would be short-sighted to say that immediately there's some sort of a problem or an activity. I moved here because of how awesome the opportunity at Kabam is. Having just come off of launching Star Wars: The Old Republic. So I think there's plenty of opportunity out there, and I think it's a fantastic space I just don't think that Facebook, as fantastic as it is, it's not the only solution to where people are gaming.
So what if EA and Activision come blasting into this market as well?
Well, EA, like you said, they have, and
They've gone after Zynga, though. I mean,
Yeah,
they haven't really gone after
yeah,
you guys.
No, there was a bunch of games in 2011 that were sort of competitive RTS-esque war games. I can't remember what the EA one was.
That was Dragon Age Legends.
Word, you remember?
Sports, I remember it.
Yeah, but there was, anyway, but bring it on, let's go. I think it'll be good for the consumer as a whole, you know, I think competition is good, and I think, it sort of raises the bar, and the more we can do that, the better it is for the consumer, and the better it is for the space.
Absolutely.
Mark, there you go.
Got a quick question for you guys. So what are your thoughts on paid advertising or paid media versus a more organic approach?
I think you have to have both. I think that it also depends on where you are in the overall product, like life cycle, right? And the type of game that you're working on. At some point, virality, it could be an explosive opportunity, or it may not exist for your particular type of game. You've got to build it in. So then if you find that your daily users are trailing off or something, then you're probably going to inject a little bit more of paid media into the equation. And maybe at some point you need a paid media injection, and then that goes away after a while because your virality picks up because you attracted the right type of consumer. It's ongoing. It's an hourly, a daily decision with respect to where you're acquiring your customers.
Others? Right there.
My question is on, so you guys are marketing services and you're using analytics to do that, and you're using a lot of direct response tactics. Where does brand come in? Is it important for your products? How do you think about that as an investment? And is that also part of the ROI equation?
That was like 5 questions.
Yeah.
I think I touched on it a little bit earlier. I think early on when you're trying to get one game out there on a platform, particularly a social networking platform, brand really doesn't matter at all. Nobody knows who you are. Your brand has 0 weight, so it's not very effective. But in terms of user acquisition, once you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games. Brand is very important because it's a signal for quality, and it sort of gives a hint at what the consumer can expect when they come into it.
So are you investing in the branding?
Yeah. Yes, we are.
So I will bring up maybe the first moment of controversy of the day, which is I actually disagree, and I think brand is everything, and I think that you have to really, really understand what your brand is and understand what your product is, at its core foundation in order to find the right consumer set and make sure that you're talking to them about the things that they're going to be really passionate about, and engaged in. And I think you guys do that stuff as well. But you know what your game's all about. Your brand is the heart, right? It's the fire, and what you're going to be communicating to people. I'm working at Kabam, so I won't give the Star Wars speech about brand, but there's something that's inherent to the future success of whatever you do, that as long as you stick to a core foundation of ideals, that you'll yield much better results in the long term. So brand is everything.
Do your founders and your executives who are looking at the bottom of the line and are always pushing you on CPA, get that lower, how do you think about that from a budgeting standpoint? And is brand just manifested through your CPA campaigns, or?
If it hasn't been previously, it will be now. Right? So I think that you have to manage both, and it's probably I would never actually trade off brand, but I think you may have to do the work simultaneously. Because you are building a user base, you're trying to figure out who you are. I mean, in any brand new industry, like when we were founding BioWare Austin way back in the day, when Rich and Gordon founded that studio, they didn't know necessarily what that was all about, but then they had this great example of the doctors and what BioWare Edmonton means, and what those bits of corporate culture are, so that you kind of build a studio, build a company you know, on a foundation of ideals that will stretch into your products. So I'm an idealist and, you know, optimist, all this kind of.
So BAM Super Bowl commercial this coming year?
Super Bowl commercials, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I don't necessarily think that's brand only. I think that is super funny and super awesome if we could do something like that. But, you know, if you don't have an ideology that you can believe in, you're going to fail.
Yeah. And we're almost done.
I think we're past our time limit. I'm not sure if we're allowed to go any longer.
There's nothing else. Core, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Take it out.